Hello, welcome to this special pre-budget broadcast. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Nirmala Sitharaman is set for a date with history this coming Tuesday. She will become India's first finance minister to present the union budget for the 7th consecutive time. It is going to be a tightrope walk for the finance minister. On the one hand, the government would want to tread on the path of fiscal discipline. On the other, the industry is hoping for more measures to boost growth, and taxpayers are saying some sweeteners. So what should one actually look forward to when the budget is presented? Lata Venkatesh is here with the big numbers.
Well, let's talk about the big numbers in the budget. This is the first time that the standout feature of the upcoming budget is that the government has more money than it expected. It has higher tax and non-tax revenues. Firstly, the government has got a 2.1 trillion rupee dividend from the Reserve Bank, whereas the interim budget had estimated only 80,000 crore dividend. So overall non-tax revenues are going up by 1.3 trillion rupees. Finance Minister Sitharaman may also estimate the tax revenues higher by about 40,000 to 50,000 crore. One, because the final receipts of FY24, that's last year, show that the government collected 27,600 crore rupees more than the interim budget estimated. That's partly why, if you remember, the fiscal deficit had fallen to 5.6% from the estimated interim budget number of 5.8%. Secondly, tax revenues in the April to July period are on an average 12 to 22% higher than last year, showing that the economy is perhaps more buoyant than expected. So the interim budget estimate of a 12% rise in direct taxes can easily be upped to 14 to 15% given the performance of the first quarter, especially direct taxes. All told, Sitharaman may raise the gross tax revenue from 38.3 trillion to 38.7 trillion. After transfers to states, the net tax revenue may jump from 26 trillion to 26.4 trillion. Adding the non-tax revenue advantage, total net revenues to the centre may rise from 30.8 trillion in the interim budget to 32.5 trillion approximately when the final budget comes. Given that we expect government revenues to be at least 1.5 to 1.7 trillion rupees higher, how will the government use it? Now, economists estimate that capex may be increased by about 40,000 crore and revenue expenditure may be increased by 60,000 crore. Some say capex won't be raised much and revenue expenditure via programs for rural development and agriculture may be upped by maybe the entire 1 trillion rupees. The rest of the excess may be used to bring down the fiscal deficit from 16.9 trillion rupees estimated in the interim budget to probably 16 to 16.34 trillion rupees. Hence, the fiscal deficit can fall from 5.1% in the interim budget to 4.9 or even 5%. Now, if the deficit indeed goes down, the government may have to borrow less from the market, probably about 50-60,000 crore less. Now, this lower borrowing by the government can push down bond yields, and that will mean the cost of capital for companies also comes down. Of course, the government may choose to spend more and keep the deficit at 16.9 lakh crore or at 5.1% of the budget, but a fall in the fiscal deficit can mean a huge leg up to a possible upgrade of India by the rating agencies, which will mean a paradigm shift in borrowing costs for India and for Indian corporates. So much hinges on this budget.
Better access to credit and ease of doing business. That's what MSMEs want from the upcoming union budget. CNBC-TV18's Shilpa Ranipeta reports that the MSMEs in Maharashtra also want the government to ensure better implementation of schemes announced during the budget.
India currently has 6.33 crore MSMEs, which together employ over 20 crore people. But the sector continues to face a multitude of problems and hurdles, from a lack of credit access to an unfavorable business environment to high costs. These enterprises are now looking to the Modi 3.0 government's first budget to offer a solution to some of these problems. Their top requests: continue the rule mandating payment within 45 days from a date a product or service is delivered, and expanding the NPA classification period from 90 days to 180 days.
See, I am pursuing this NPA 90 days to 180 days to be changed as definition for last 2 years. I had a meeting with the two RBI deputy governors where we have also discussed this point that 90 days is very less period for any company to become NPA. They should not change the definition of 45 days payment to be receivable from the corporates and PSB or any PSU. This is a strict, we have recommended to the minister that should not change at all. Because of that, so many SMEs are dying. They are not getting their trade receivable.
Access to credit is a hurdle MSMEs have been grappling with for years. The government has announced a few relief measures like the credit guarantee scheme. But MSMEs say the compliance burden and actually getting the funds under these schemes are problem areas.
Wherever the MSME approaches banks and they don't get any loans without collaterals. Okay. So the collaterals plays a very important role, whereas the MSME doesn't have that flexibility to bring in a collateral and take the loan facilities. So it really doesn't work that way.
We have recommended that the MSME sector should be given an sort of an priority sector. The banks should give them at a lesser interest, and by which the manufacturing can be encouraged. Correct. Government intent is there, but the banks are not really in the ground level. It is not happening.
Data from the government shows that 11.65 lakh guarantees worth over 1 lakh crore rupees were approved in FY23 under the credit guarantee scheme, and under the Pradhan Mantri Mudra Yojana, which offers collateral-free loans of up to 10 lakh rupees, total disbursals stood at 5.2 lakh crore rupees as of FY24.
While access to credit and capital is critical for MSMEs, many of them say that support in terms of technology, capability building and upskilling is equally critical for them to grow from micro to small to medium to eventually large enterprises.
For this, they hope the budget will allocate funds towards upskilling and reskilling enterprises.
Besides having technical understanding of the business, entrepreneurs and their organizations needs to understand management science also along with it. Management science plays a vital role in the growth or transformation of any organization.
Infrastructure is another area in which the sector hopes the government will help.
Providing reduced electricity for the MSME exporters, because many areas are landlocked countries and they don't have any port facilities. So we have requested to provide dry port facilities. We have requested to increase the basic custom duty of the value-added products, because what is happening is presently the FTAs are not having that reciprocity. So if you are importing these low-end substandard products, the domestic industry is going to be affected.
MSMEs account for over 45% of the country's exports, and so the hope is the government will come up with more measures or enhance existing ones to boost exports.
Budget may see the announcement of the setting up of a global trade body. This, experts say, is good news for the industry, as it not only gives smaller enterprises exposure to international markets, but will also help boost exports and reduce India's rising trade deficit. In Mumbai, Shilpa Ranipeta.
From Lakpati Didi to the Ujjwala scheme, the budget is likely to focus on women-centric welfare schemes, both in terms of new schemes and also better allocation for existing ones. CNBC-TV18 Santya Gora takes a look at the schemes that could see special focus and also the government's rationale behind it.
Women empowerment and upliftment has been a pillar of the BJP dispensation since it first came to power in 2014. When it first came to power, it announced schemes like the Ujjwala scheme, which promised access to cheaper cooking gas for BPL women, and the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, a multi-layered program on women's health, improving the sex ratio and girl education. Both schemes have been successful. Under the Ujjwala scheme, for instance, the government has provided over 10 crore free gas connections so far and has consistently allocated a high budget to this scheme. A much newer scheme which was introduced in the BJP's second term is the Lakpati Didi scheme. It aimed to provide vocational training, interest-free loans up to 5 lakh rupees and other assistance to 2 crore members of women's self-help groups aiming to push their incomes above 1 lakh rupees annually. In the interim budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said the scheme had 1 crore Lakpati Didis and increased the target to 3 crore Lakpati Didis by the end of 2026. So experts say this scheme could see more allocation in the upcoming budget. Now, one reason experts believe these women-centric schemes could see a higher focus is that BJP has long considered women voters a critical vote bank. According to Lokniti CSDS survey, 36% of the women voters in 2024 favored the BJP, the same as in 2019, but higher than the 29% in 2014. Now it has 4 state-level assembly elections coming up and it does not want to lose this momentum. So it's not just the centre-level schemes that are expected to see a higher allocation in the budget. At the state level also, women-centric schemes that can be availed in addition to the central schemes may be on the anvil. NDA-ruled Maharashtra, which goes to polls in October, has already announced such a scheme. The Mukhyamantri Ladki Bahin Yojana promises financial assistance of 1,500 rupees per month to underprivileged women in the 21 to 65-year age group. The BJP is also aware that a few other states have already implemented their own women welfare schemes, many involving a cash handout, like Madhya Pradesh's Ladli Bahin Yojana, West Bengal's Lakshmi Bhandar scheme and Assam's Arnodai scheme. Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Karnataka and Delhi also have similar schemes in place. So new schemes in BJP-ruled states that don't yet have such women-centric schemes cannot be ruled out completely, especially with more states going to polls in the coming years.
All right. Thank you, Santhya, for joining us with that report. Time now for a break. But up next, from higher investments in artificial intelligence and green energy to higher outlay for education, Young India has its priorities in place when it comes to the budget. The CNBC-TV18 budget box travels to college campuses across the country. We get you the students' wish list up next.